cool.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we have to talk about the X-Files. You joined the cast in 1994 as the cunning and charming Alex Krycek, a role that most of your fans are drawn to. Can you take us back to the origins of
what did they say? What did they say in that that TV Wire came up with that list of I don't know, favorite X-Files characters, and what did they say about me? Crystal,
you were pretty high up there on the list.
Well, I was, and I got to tell you, the list came out, and I saw the list. It was, I saw the heading 25 most whatever characters on the X-Files, and I was like, am I going to be on it? Like as I was going from 25 down to 24, 23, 20, 17, 18, 16, 15, I was like, oh no, I may not even be on this list. I thought, it'd be great if I'm on it. And then as I got down to the bottom, I thought, oh no, this is horrible. I'm not even on this list. And then I was number 5, which was kind of nice. But what did they call me? Like my pansexual appeal. And I'm not 100% sure what pansexual means, but
you're sexual to pots and pans. Like the call.
Yeah, I've got there's a real attraction there for me, kitchenware. But what was your question?
No, I was said take us back to when you first found out you were going to be involved in the show.
Oh, well, that was great. I mean, I did one episode called Gender Bender in the very first season. And that's where I met Rob Bowman, who directed that episode, and he and I, that sort of became a friendship and a kind of a really fun collaboration as far as I was concerned. Like 3 or 4 scene little arc for me, and then of course famously Jillian, the actress, the person, got pregnant, and they asked me or they brought me in to audition for the role, and I got it, and it sort of changed my life.
Yes. When you've got the first call saying, hey, we want you to come in and do an episode of the X-Files, had you been a fan of the series?
No, I hadn't seen any of it.
Okay.
I mean, I can't remember what Gender Bender was in the first season, what episode number it was, but I'm not even 100% sure the show had aired. I guess it must have, but I don't remember seeing the show, and so I didn't really know what it was. I only sort of knew what that particular story was, and that's where I met David, who went on to be a friend of mine, and Jillian, of course.
Yeah, well, when you joined the show, it already had established characters and great talent playing them.
Totally,
including David, Jillian, Mitch, Bill Davis.
Yeah.
How were the main cast very receptive and accepted of you coming on set? Did they welcome you?
Yeah, I think David and I are really close in age, and so I think if I'm not mistaken, he and I kind of started a friendship really early on. He was in Vancouver. He didn't know a lot of people. He was sort of on set all the time. And I remember, so chiefly I worked with David at the beginning, and then started to work with Mitch, worked with Jillian, but a little bit less so. So Mitch and I became friends. David and I became friends, and it's a remarkable experience to be able to go onto a show, especially once the show, kind of caught fire, and go to work with your friends all the time, and Kim Manners, the director, the late great Kim Manners, Rob Bowman, who's gone on to many other fantastic things. So I started to feel like I was part of a little community, and then the show really started to take off, and that really sort of gave me a leg up in my career. I could easily have not gotten that show and easily been wallowing away in anonymity still.
Right.
Like a lot of actors.
Yeah, there could be you could be doing Extra 19 by now.
Extra 19. Hey, wait.
There is actually an Extra 3, I think, or 4.
Is it better or worse than 2?
They're all pretty good. They're all pretty, what you're expecting, cheesy killer alien movies.
That movie cost like $147, I think. So, and it really is a kind of movie that probably requires $114 million. So it was, they had to cut some corners. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's like $6 in US. So
that's like the oldest joke in the world now. Eh?
I know.
That's like almost fell off my dinosaur kind of joke.
Well, did you feel your character of Krychek was well written? Did you ever get any scripts, and when you read it, you thought, he wouldn't say that or he wouldn't do that?
That's a good question, Dom. You know, I would sort of pop up fairly regularly on the show, and then I'd have to wonder sort of what happened to my character in the interim. You know, when you didn't see him, what was he doing? And so you never knew. You just never knew. And I always say to when I'm asked, you know, when I'm talking about this at cons and stuff, that you know, it was like Christmas. Every time you get a script, you'd open it. Especially, I felt, for my character. I mean, less so for some of those people, because their character arcs were fairly straight ahead. Mine kind of zigged and zagged all over the place, and you know, you just never know. You'd open up a script and you start reading it, and you go, okay, so like I'm gonna be have an alien oil inside of me, and I'm going to be lying on top of a spaceship inside a missile silo, puking alien out of my face, or I'm going to be hanging from 17 floors by one arm, or I'm going to run out of an exploding car, like I was talking about earlier, or I'm going to get shot in the head and come back as a ghost, or you know, just like it never ended, right? And I loved that guy that Krychek had 9 lives or 10. And it was fun, eh? Like you sort of were constantly on your back heels a little bit, because like if you look at David's character, for example, you know, pretty delineated sort of beginning, middle, and end. My character just kind of went all over the place. So I sort of gave up expecting to sort of see a real obvious character arc, and just invested more in the playing of the experience, you know, the moments.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they ever let you improvise? If you would read a script and you'd say, "Can we change?" You know, he would say this instead of this. Were they pretty easygoing with that, or was it sticking?
It was less about improvising lines for me than it was improvising moments. You know. There's in Dwayne Barry, actually, is it Dwayne Barry or Ascension? I think maybe Ascension, where David goes up the gondola. This is a very, very small example, but there's the gondola operator, and I walk up and whack him in the head, and then kind of like fix my hair afterwards, which is not like, you know, the most remarkable improvisation ever in the world, but there was always room for me to bring a little bit extra to those moments. I'm trying to think of others.
Well, it's those little nods like that fans connect with.
Yeah, and you know, there was a number of moments where like they would hold camera, and I would be looking away, and then I'd look up into camera, those were all my kind of choices. And I would quite often try to, when the character came on camera, I would quite often try to hide my face so that there was a reveal about about my character. There's a number of examples of that. If you go back through the show, you'll see, like, I was always trying, because I knew that I was lucky enough to know that some of the fans really liked the character. So I like to kind of give them a little sort of surprise, you know, when the character would show up.
Yeah, I've noticed in some episodes, Krychek was very like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You know, he'd be looking at you, but it would be someone else talking.
right, for sure. You know, I could go back and watch a lot of those moments and think to myself, oh, you know, that was my idea to do this, or that was my idea to do that. In Gender Bender, and these are stories that I tell at cons, so if people have heard these stories, I apologize. But in Gender Bender, when Rob Bowman was directing, the idea was I was making out with this woman, and she gets out of the car and turns into a man, and I was just supposed to look through the window and see this woman morph into a man. And I said to Bowman, I said, "What are the chances of us like steaming up the window because they're having sex inside, and the window's steamy, and I clean back the steam on the window, and then there's the reveal, right? And he's like, great idea. So let's go get a kettle. So somebody ran off and got a kettle, and in between takes, they take the kettle and hold it up to the window so that or what's another example of that? I've forgotten the episode now. It was one of the ones we shot in LA. I was meeting a guy on top of a building, and Rob Bowman was directing again. I said, "Hey, Rob, what if there was, like, I've got my coat and it's up, and it's sort of like this, spy who came in from the cold." And I said, "What if there was just like a little bit of wind, like just blowing the collar of my coat? It's a small little thing, but maybe it'd be cool." And he's like, "Yeah, I like it." So they go down to the truck and they bring out this massive fan, and they put it up, and sure enough, there's my collar just kind of like blowing in the wind. So, there was always time, especially as the show went on and there was more money and a little bit more time to do things. There was always, that's the way I am. I always show up with like, hey, how about this idea or that idea? I did that a fair bit on Vertical Limit, I have a death scene at the end of Vertical Limit where Bill Paxton, good old dear Bill Paxton, rest his soul. It was, I can't even remember how it was written now, but I rewrote the end of the scene. I took it to the director and I said, "How about this?" And he said, "Yeah, great, let's do that." So, I always like to get involved if I can, and if people say no, that's fine. But then quite often they don't. So,
yeah, I think that's a great thing because you're connecting with the character.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that there are things that I hope there are things that people watching will like, right? If I like it, hopefully they like it.
Yeah. Well, you had a really great group of guest starring actors that would come in and out of X-Files.
Totally.
Can you talk about one or two or three that left an impression on you, either on screen or off?
Well, the very first guy that really left an impression on me was Steve Railsback. He came in to play Dwayne Barry, and I remember, and I knew who he was, because he'd done some pretty great work prior to that, and I just remember watching him very closely because I was a pretty young actor, even though I was, I was 27 or 28 or whatever when I was doing that, because I started so late. I didn't start until I was 25, right? Most people start way younger than me, and that might be why I was so shitty so early on, was because I didn't know what I was doing. And although it looked like I should know what I was doing, but I didn't start until I was 25, and that was like walking into my first acting class at 25, not getting my first job. I didn't get my first job till I was 28, 29. But so watching a guy like Steve Railsback was a gift, right? Like, it was, I was very fortunate just to sort of be on set and watch him do his thing. And Steve Railsback is actor studio, back in the day, the 50s, right? The beginning of close to the beginning of the real revolution in American acting, right? So I was very lucky to sort of get to be present for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Steve was one of the first actors to play Manson. He did it eerily well.
He was not only one of the first, he was the best.
Absolutely.
And it's fascinating, right? Because the guy was so good, and he's nothing like that.
No,
he's a nut, and I love him, but but he did it so well that it kind of pigeonholed him a little bit for a while there, right?
Yeah, I remember the first, Steve was one of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first con that we did together. I hadn't met him yet, just on email and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting out of the elevator. You know how some of the elevators talk? They say going up or going down. Mm-hmm. So the elevator says going down. And I hear somebody saying, where, which one? And it was Steve. And I looked and I said, Steve, the elevator's not going to answer you.
Yeah, that sounds like Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, I love him. He's funny. He's interesting. He's super talented. Yeah.
Yeah. Melanie's watching. She said the Dwayne Barry story arc is what hooked me on the X-Files.
Yeah, good. Hey, Melanie, how's it going? I completely agree. Those were really good episodes. And that's the other thing is I not only was I lucky enough to be on the show, but I was lucky enough to be involved in some of the very best episodes. I think maybe I'm biased, but like Tunguska and Terma, some of the episodes that happened in Russia, I just thought were some of the best that the show did. I was lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Were you happy with your character's demise, and was that scene difficult for you?
No, I wasn't happy with my character's demise. First of all, Mitch Pileggi did it, and
He did.
I'll never forgive him for that. But I put it this way: I kind of like the way he died, but I felt to be honest with you, I thought it was premature. I think Krychek would have been great in the first couple of movies, and not because I like to work, but because I just thought he was a important part of that show, and then important enough to keep a storyline going for sure. And they brought him back as a ghost, which I didn't 100% understand. But these things happen, they happen.
Right.
Listen, those guys that wrote and produced and made that show, it's a lot of years and a lot of episodes. Those are back in the day when they were doing 22 episodes and not 10 or 12. And guys like Bob Goodwin and Kim Manners and Rob Bowman are kind of the unsung heroes a little bit of that show. I mean, of course, Chris and Frank and all those guys are so super talented, but there's guys that brought real flavor to that show that don't maybe sometimes get the recognition that they deserve. It was it could have been a show that kind of went under the wire a little bit if it wasn't for some of the guys that really brought flavor to that show.
For sure.
Yeah.
And as you know, they came back and did a revival for season 10. Were you ever asked to be a part of it? I
was not, but I spoke to Frank Spotnitz when I saw him last time I saw him, and he said that there was talk of doing an exclusively Krychek episode, like what they did with Mitch. But it didn't happen. They had limited time to tell the stories they wanted to, which is a drag because I think that could have been pretty interesting. And I don't know if the show's ever going to come back in any shape or form again. But if it does, I hope I'm part of it because like I said, I just think I would be better now.
Right.
Yeah.
Valerie's asking, have you watched the X-Files revival episodes?
No. Okay. I watched the first season, but not the second.
Okay. I thought season 11 was better. Season 10, Yeah, I thought season 11 was really well done because I think they rely too much on David and Jillian personally. They build the story. They have so many great supporting casts, and they were just kind of putting them in for one scene. And, I felt like they were underutilizing them. In season 11, as you said, they gave Mitch an episode. They explored, they brought Monica Reyes back. They did more of the smoking man. They kind of took the pedal off David and Jillian a little bit.
Well, I mean, that was those guys are also busy, and maybe they, who knows? But I know that in season 10, I think the Lone Gunman had like a one scene that was like a flashback.
Yeah,
which I don't know. Like those David and Jillian and Mitch obviously were the thrust of that show, and would never have been the same without them, or as good without them. But I do feel, and I'm not even speaking of myself, but I do feel like there was people on that show that really brought that were integral to making the show what it ended up being.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Looking back at the X-Files, is there one or two or particular episodes that you look at and you feel most proud of as far as your work?
Well, we talked already about Terma and Tunguska, and I like those storylines. I like what they did production-wise because, and that's another thing I was going to say. Guys like Kim Manners, Rob Bowman, Bob Goodwin, the showrunner in Vancouver, who is responsible for corralling a room. Emily says, "I was so hoping Krychek would live through that bullet." You and me both. You and me both. Believe me. I tried. Those guys, you know, that wrangled all the cats in Vancouver and in LA once the show went down there, are really deserve so much of the credit, because I remember one episode, you know, and I was in it, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right now, but it started on a fishing boat in the middle of the Pacific, and then it went to a graveyard in Washington, and then it was in China and in Hong Kong, and it's like those things are hard to do and hard to produce and hard to physically make happen, and well enough so that the audience believes it, right? But what was your question?
No, you answered it, actually.
No, there was a tail end.
Favorite episode that you're most proud of?
Oh yeah, so and Tunguska and Terma. Where's my glasses?
Melanie says it's a video of you singing with David Duchovny, and you're actually vocally better. You're performed in live music other places.
That's not for me to say, unfortunately. Yeah, I used to play in a band. And to see me do it, I did a show called Men in Trees, and they asked me to write and record a song for that show, which I did, and had a great time doing that, because nobody's really ever asked me to sing on camera before, so that was good times. But Tunguska and Terma, because there was a physicality to those episodes. You know, I was being chased by horses, you know, rolling around the back of the bed of a pickup, going down a road and rolling off the back, and being in the gulag with David, and speaking Russian on top of that was. I mean, it kind of asked of me all the things that I love to do. Right. I mean, it was speaking Russian was really challenging, because I don't know the language. So they put me with a coach, and you can't learn an entire language in like a week and a half. It's impossible. So what I ended up having to do was memorize what the words were and the sounds that they made in order to sound authentic, like an actual Russian accent. Mm-hmm. And also be acting at the same time. So, for example, if I'm saying a line in Russian and you're responding to me in Russian, in the back of my mind, I have to be saying, okay, this is what I'm saying, this is why I'm saying it, and this is what he's saying back to me, and I should respond in an appropriate manner. When the words are not words that you can't do three things at the same time, right? But I tried to.
You have to say them and express them.
You have to say them and express them and sound authentic, while not, you know, and you get into a scene where it's back and forth. I'm talking, you're talking, I'm talking, you're talking, and then it's easy to get lost in what's actually being said, because you're speaking words that are not that you don't understand. I understood them, but when you get into a scene, you know, it's hard to sort of be kind of comprehending and speaking at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. Sure. Love Tunguska and Terma. Yeah, they were good episodes. They were well written episodes. They were well produced episodes. They were exciting. They were fun as hell to do. You know.
Right. Isabella is saying, did you get hate on the streets because of the character? I loved to hate Krychek. He's one of my favorites for sure.
No, listen, I never got hate. I got love to hate, which is a completely different thing. It's you know, and that was my goal. I got to say, I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but that was actually my goal. I didn't want people to know whether they liked me or hated me. When I first started doing that role, and I knew that he was duplicitous because it was in the script. Right. I was like, okay, I can't make this guy a good guy who's pretending to be bad, and I don't want to make him a bad guy who's redeemable. So where in there do I find this guy and how to play him, right? So, and really there was very little that he did that was redeemable. So if people said they love to hate me, I feel like I did my job.
Yeah, absolutely.